You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
Welcome to the 21.5 Show, a podcast for professional pilots by professional pilots. Join Dylan and Max, both with experience in flight instruction, the airlines, and business aviation, as they talk to a variety of industry experts, share stories, and have a little fun along the way.
Here we go, Max, episode 89. Welcome to all the pilots joining us out there for the 21.5 Show, a program dedicated and created for professional pilots.
By professional pilots.
That's right. My name is Dylan. I'm joining you, representing in this corner, business aviation.
I'm Max, and I am involved in the airlines as well as general aviation.
Oh, that's right. You and I, for the first time in a long time, did a little general aviation the other day, a couple times.
We got our prop on.
We took the Murphy Moose out for a spin. I finally got into it. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's all documented on external, internal video, audio, because we were on a mission.
Oh, man. Tell them what we were doing.
We loaded up all of our podcast gear, and we did an on-location interview with who was my number one wish list of interviewees that our producer, who you all will meet soon, connected for us. So we went out to Santa Barbara and we interviewed a guy named Roger Rees. Most of you probably have not heard of him, but he wrote a book called Smuggler, and he was the largest drug smuggling pilot of all time.
Yeah.
Or one of them, who has about 15 lives and is an incredible storyteller. So we had a marathon interview sesh with him that we are getting edited and cleaned up and put together, that we are really looking forward to airing, probably what will be shortly after the new year, right?
That's the plan. Even some video component. Listen,
yeah, we get video. We really stepped outside of our comfort zone.
It was really good.
It was a blast.
Well, I was outside of my comfort zone when we were cruising in the Moose at 11,500 feet. It was a little chilly up there.
Yeah, but we were riding a 50-knot tailwind, so we were cooking.
Just got to do it. That Garmin autopilot you have in there is nice. We just got right up there. And
it's got VNAV and everything. What else do you want?
So funny. This is an interesting story. So we're flying along. Maybe this was on the way out. So we were maybe like 6,500 feet. And we're near Palmdale, I think. It was somewhere kind of north of LA. You know, Max has got the cool, like, latest Garmin avionics in there, and it's got ADS-B and everything. And then we're flying along, and we see this ADS-B target. And, it's at the same altitude as us. Oh, it's kind of heading towards us. And we're looking out the window, cannot see this airplane. Looking, and it just keeps coming right towards us.
I turned to maneuver, and it turned back towards us.
Yeah. It was like a 50-knot heat-seeking missile was out trying to get us. And we're like, are we getting pranked right now? Like, what's going on? So you ended up doing a 360.
Yeah, ended up just doing a full 360 to let this person go by. And then we came out of the 360 and we formed up on their wing.
And they didn't see us. They turned at us again.
I know. And then it turns it. So it finally started rocking the wings and flipped on every light I had. And then I think they saw us then. But without ADS-B, what?
That was the whole point of this story. It was like, without ADS-B, I don't know what we would have done there. I'll tell you what would have happened. The world would have lost a top 45 aviation podcast. That's what would have happened.
That's what would have happened.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways.
And some kids would have lost their fathers.
Basically, we put our lives on the line for that interview with Roger, which we'll be sharing with you guys in the coming weeks. So, if you're new to the show, welcome, because this is how we do it. We have some jokes every once in a while. So, speaking of follies in the airplane, you were telling me a funny story the other day about preparing for going to recurrent training.
Yeah, so I was going to AQP and at my airline job.
Max flies at 737.
And so the company, they published like a study guide, the relevant topics this year and what you should know and yada, yada. Yeah. So I printed it out just to be able to like kind of carry it around and stuff. And I was studying it, signature one day before.
Yeah, right.
And
on the flight out.
Yeah, my son goes, Dad, why does that say 2023? And I kind of stopped for a second. I'm like, why does that say 2023? And so my training event is at the end of the year. So there's people that start in January.
Uh-huh.
So they published the 23 study guide, of which I had printed out and was studying, but I needed to be studying the 22 study guide.
Did they add a third engine to the 737 for 2023?
Well, no, listen. There's topics of the year, you know, it's all thing.
That's funny.
But yeah, so shout out to my son for saving the day. It would have been very embarrassing.
For AQP, do you do like an oral?
Yeah.
With the other pilot that's doing the recurrent with you?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like crew.
Your crew, except for like memory item and limitations. That's like, hey, what's this answer? Like, you better know the answer.
You better know the answer.
And then the rest of the stuff you can kind of bounce around if you need to. But
so, you go, well, in 2023, it's oxygen mask on, speaker, then.
Hopefully there's no changes.
Yeah.
No,
Ooh.
it was fine. It's not a big deal.
Okay. All right. So that's something good to know for next year.
Yeah, I'm way ahead of the game.
Yeah.
I'm a year out.
Speaking of airlines, our brothers and sisters at Delta Airlines look like they're about to get paid with their new AIP getting released.
Yeah, it's good. We have all been waiting for someone to go first here. So that tends to accelerate things with everyone else, which is the good news, which is good for the whole industry as a whole. Everyone's going to have their opinion if the AIP is good or bad and whatever. It's all good. Just how good? Is it good enough? I guess is the question, right? It's pay raises and other improvements, which is always good. It's whether...
If I know pilots, I know at least 20% of the pilot group will be like, oh, I'm not voting.
Of course. Well, it's just like anything else, dude. Especially so much time and energy and money goes into negotiating these things.
Yeah.
If the company or the pilots think they got a score, then more realistically, no one's going to be happy, which means it was fair. And
that's my saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone still goes through with the deal, but nobody's happy about it. Then it's usually a fair deal. We're not Delta pilots. We don't know the specifics of the AIP. We just know it came out. If you're a Delta pilot and you want to share your opinion about what you think, we'd love to hear about it. You can shoot us an email, info@215podcast.com, and educate us. Maybe we're totally wrong and we're cheering on a terrible contract. I don't think that's the case.
It's still got to be voted on and passed. It's just it's like a LOI. It's a letter of intent. It's as good as the paper it's written on until it's ratified.
Hot topics. So you and I are both Twitter fans. I've become a big Twitter fan more recently.
Since when?
Well, it was before Elon bought Twitter, but once Elon bought Twitter, things have been going crazy, as many folks may know. But one of the things that beyond like the FTX crash and the Twitter files and all this stuff, I kept seeing people write, no one's talking about ChatGPT. And I'm like, what is ChatGPT?
That's because no one knows what it is.
I know. So I kept seeing people mention it on Twitter, so I looked it up. ChatGPT is this like chatbot, basically from OpenAI, which is one of the big AI research outfits. And it's essentially this, you can like have conversations with AI, which is insane. And I've just been playing around with it for a couple of days, and it's much better than a normal chatbot you would chat with the target,
your bank when you're trying.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I typed a couple of things in here just for fun. So I'm going to read them to you because I thought it was funny. So you can basically ask them to like explain stuff to you, and you can add a twist to it. So here's what I wrote in. I said, explain the lift equation to me, but do it like a French chef. And this thing spits this out in 2 seconds. It goes, the lift equation. Well, just as a chef would need the perfect blend of ingredients to create a delicious dish, a plane needs the perfect combination of forces to fly. The lift equation states that lift is equal to the speed of the aircraft multiplied by its wing area, multiplied by the density of air and divided by 2. So think of it like the secret recipe for the perfect entree. The right combination of lift, speed, wing area, and air density will give the aircraft the lift it needs to soar through the air. Bon appetit.
If that doesn't freak you out right now.
That just blew my mind. So with a more practical one, I didn't ask it to, I messed around and said, explain this like a cowboy. And it like explained it like an old Western. I did an exercise instructor, all these different ones. It was crazy.
An exercise instructor?
Yeah, that one didn't work as well.
Was it Richard Simmons specifically?
I should have. I did one as the Terminator. It's insane that it even knows this stuff. So I typed in another thing and I said, can you explain FAR Part 6158? And it comes and it goes, FAR Part 6158 covers the flight review requirements for pilots. It outlines the requirements for an FAA-approved ground and flight examination to be taken every 24 calendar months for pilots with a valid pilot's license. The examination must pass to keep a valid license and cover the knowledge and skills required for safe aircraft operation. It also includes a practical test of skill and knowledge, as well as an oral or written exam. So, I mean, it's just like summarizing stuff. Here's the last thing. It can write stories for you, and it can write like letters for you.
Yeah, can you have it write like love stuff?
I always write a love letter to Lindsay, my wife, and it just wrote one out. It's insane. Scary. AI's coming.
I'm going to use this. Do you ever get those questions from your kids about something that's easy to understand for you, but then they ask you to explain it and it's really hard to explain?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm going to use it for.
Like the lift equation. Anyways, I'll have a link in the show notes. You can check it out. You do have to like sign up and create an account, but it's free, but it is scary.
Can you give this to your son and just have for all of his questions?
Just have a conversation.
I just want to see,
with him.
and then can we log it so that we can go back and review it later just to see all the stuff he's up to?
Oh my gosh. What are you into? What is he doing?
New phone. Who dares?
Yeah. Anyways, it's crazy. AI is coming. It's going to eat all of our lunch. Fortunately, it's probably not going to be able to fly an airplane for a little while.
There's a great book called Our Final Invention.
Yeah.
Right? Is that what it's called?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that book you will lose sleep. So,
yeah.
If you really want to dive deep into this, then read that. Wait, didn't you ask the bot about this?
Well, that's deep. We went a little too deep.
All right. That's another podcast.
Yeah. I will tell you this. AI will probably study the right year's study guide for recurrent. So
funny.
something to keep out. All right. All our hats are gone. Thomas bought the last one. Thank you so much, Thomas. Appreciate the support. We're going to have to make something. So I'm basically waiting for a Black Friday type deal. And I think we'll do Yeti cups next, right?
An ATIS wheel. That's what I want.
Let us know what product you want us to make next, and we'll overprice it and sell it to you. It'll be great.
Overprice it, sell it to you, and not make very much money.
Yeah, and still not make any money.
We're
Yeah.
incredible at that.
Amazing.
I look forward to every new episode. A friend shared your page on LinkedIn. Afterwards, I binge listened to all the episodes on a road trip back in May from Charlotte to Pensacola and back. I was hooked. Incidentally, I just finished binge watching all of episodes of Ted Lasso earlier this spring. I love the Diamond Dog reference. You have a really engaging and interesting show. Keep it up. Keep up the great work. Geez, I hope they don't experiment with any illegal drugs because they seem to have a fairly addictive personality.
Yeah, that's right. Be very, I'm so hooked.
Be careful, 145 Captain.
That's right. Well,
No.
thanks for the review, though, 145 Captain. Of course, we're just kidding, but we'd love to send you some stickers for writing a review.
God, I wonder what it's like listening to all of our shows because our show went through such a weird time in aviation as it still is.
Oh, yeah.
To hear the ups and downs so rapidly. The furlough flu. Now everyone's hiring 5,000 people a year. You know, that could all have happened in the span of 2 days.
Welcome to episode 51. We've all lost our jobs. We're all looking into
Just
truck
stay
driving
positive,
school.
man. You
We
know,
can do it.
this ship goes down, it goes up. Blah blah. Oh,
As you'll hear.
look at Delta Captain in 6 months. What?
Well, if you want to write a review for our show, please do on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and let us know. Shoot us an email like 145 Captain is going to, and give me your address, and I'll send you some stickers for your trouble. I also got an email that we got a review on YouTube, and it was from our episode that had to talk about like AOG and like the parts like nightmare right now.
I remember doing that one in the FBO Telluride.
Yeah, right. So anyways, this YouTube review, I'm like, oh, cool. Someone's writing a review on YouTube because not a lot of people listen on YouTube. It just said, can I be on the show? I'm like, what is this? This is my 7-year-old. My 7-year-old thinks like his goal is to be a YouTuber when he grows up. Like he loves Mr. Beast and YouTube stuff. And so he found out that I had a YouTube channel. So then he like went and checked out all the things. But he's did a joke podcast with my other son where he like writes jokes and tell them. And now he wants to come on our show to tell jokes. So I don't know. That was an interesting request. We've received a few requests to come on the show, but none that way. So
Not from a 7-year-old.
yeah, good
Are
work.
there any aviation jokes or just?
We'll just have to see.
All right.
We'll have to give him his big premiere one of these days. All right. On to the mailbag. More conventional forms of folks reaching out to us. Of course, the mailbag is brought to you by Advanced Aircrew Academy, the authority when it comes to training modules for aviation flight departments. Aircrewacademy.com to check out all of their offerings. And I'm excited for this new offering that's coming up. They have a partnership with the Air Charter Safety Foundation. The Air Charter Safety Foundation manages ASAP programs for over 200 flight departments for Part 91 and 135. I don't know if you've ever talked to them. They actually came and talked to us for the Arizona operators. It's pretty cool. You can have an ASAP program as Part 91 operation, which, as we both know from our airline exposure, very valuable to have. Anyways, the ACSF is partnering with Advanced Aircrew Academy to provide de-identified ASAP reports as well as ASAP trends. Based on that information, Advanced Aircrew Academy is going to be developing short animated videos highlighting common errors to help operators mitigate risks, make our training more scenario-based, and provide timely real-world examples to make training more effective and interesting. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Anytime you watch an animation of something that happened, it always makes a chill go through your veins. Sometimes when you watch the animation, you're
Right.
like, whoa.
Especially when you know what the outcome is.
Yeah, it's much different than someone just reading to you about this. But yeah, right.
Check out aircrewacademy.com to find out all of the offerings that they're working on for professional pilots. On to the mailbag. Go ahead from Ryan.
Ryan from Instagram says, does it confuse anyone else that the FAA felt it necessary to change NOTAMs to notice to air missions, but they still say caution for men and equipment on the field? That's awesome.
Ooh, checkmate.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, he's got a good one. That's a good one. I don't know, Ryan. I don't have a response to that.
People and equipment on the field?
Yeah. Individuals. I don't know the answer.
Or whatever.
All right. Next email is from Mike. He writes in a very long and very informative email about a topic that all pilots must confront, and that is vision. And you fly a lot with older captains. What's the percentage of captains that you see that are wearing some type of reading glasses?
That's hard to say because I fly primarily AMs, and so most times they're wearing sunglasses. But no, I mean, this time of year, though, no, in the morning, it's always dark. I'm trying to think. I don't know. A lot of people wearing readers, but I think that it's a lot easier to get by nowadays because of the zoom function of an iPad.
Oh,
like when
that's
there was
true.
just little paper charts,
Yeah.
I could see that would be a struggle a lot of time.
Mike makes a good point in the email. He says, the challenge for pilots is that we need to be able to focus on infinity out the window, mid-range vision for the panel, and close-up for EFB and the overhead panel. So he started doing some research on progressive lenses. There are some different options that he mentions in his entire journey of going through to find out what works and what doesn't.
We should post this somewhere, though. For a certain segment
Yeah.
of people, this will be super interesting.
So I think we're going to make this into a blog post on our website just because it's hard to convey via podcast, but it's a good read, and I think it's real valuable.
So basically, if you are having difficulty seeing stuff, whether that's your iPad or the instrument panel or whatever, check this out because this guy, Mike, laid it out very...
Yeah, he sums it up here and he says, so if you are in Generation X and looking at needing more than drugstore cheaters, don't waste your time. Go right to the Verilux X series. So we appreciate the info, Mike. We'll get that posted on the website so folks can get some more information on that.
Hey guys, I'm new to listening to the show and love your podcast. I've recently started my journey out of the military and recently accepted a CJO for American. I really appreciate y'all's insight into the various topics and laid back approach with your guest speakers and interviews. I only have one question though. After viewing your website, I saw y'all had an amazing gray hat and it's sold out. When are you making more? Thanks, Robert.
Robert, you can have mine. It's sitting at the bottom of a lake in Canada.
No, that's camo one, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Gray one
right.
is. We
Gray
have
one
zero hats
was
right
hot.
now?
We're at 0. I'm sorry, Robert. We'll do another run at some point. I'll let you know. You can't buy them one off. You have to order them in a whole group. It's a whole thing. Next email comes in from Chris. It says, Dylan and Max, I love the show. Heard about it from your friends at Advanced Aircrew Academy. I just started listening and working my way backwards to episode 62. I'd probably just stop right about in the old 60s range there.
What episode are we on right now?
89.
Oh.
There's a lot of COVID episodes in there. Anyways, he says, you and your guests were discussing if FOQA had come to business aviation. It has, and it's been around for at least 10 years, I believe.
Ooh.
GE has a program called CFOQA, which benchmarks an operator's data with comparable operators. He shares the link, which we'll post in the show notes. And if you remember when we talked to Dave Keys a couple episodes ago, remember that flight safety training video we talked about where the GE is partnering with flight safety to share some of that data for training. So thanks for that resource, Chris. Appreciate it.
Hey, Max and Dylan, thanks for the wonderful podcast. Love the humor, the production quality. I've helped manage 3 podcast shows and know the work that goes into a quality product and the content. I also recently wrote a blog post on how to become a pro pilot, then found your podcast and updated it to include the 21.5. Cheers and looking forward to more content from Tigre.
I visited his website. We were in the top 3 of his recommended podcasts. So we're out of the top 44 and into the top 3, at least on one blog post. We'll share a link to his article. Thanks, Tigre. Okay, that's going to do it for the mailbag today.
It's like it rain or pours with this mailbag.
I know. Comes in. We love it. We love to hear from folks. You can shoot us an email, info@215podcast.com. Or if you need to send us something anonymously, you can do it via the flight advice form on our website. Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
Yeah.
Speaking of flight advice, this whole next segment is basically just a big, massive helping of flight advice.
Just flight advice with a turtleneck.
That's right. James is going to join us to give his insight on retirement numbers, and they are staggering.
Yeah, that was eye-opening.
Yeah. Before we go in there, I just wanted to mention our regular flight advice sponsor, which is Harvey Watt Insurance. Of course, many of you know that they provide all of the loss of medical certificate insurance for professional pilots around the globe. If you just visit harveywatt.com, you can get an instant quote on their website without having to talk to anyone and without having to give any contact information. I actually had it up on the website. I'm going to do it for you right now in real time, Max. How much do you think it would cost to insure me, a 40-year-old pilot?
You don't even have to say like what your income.
No. All you have to do is say your age and what you want on your coverage.
What are the options?
I'm going to show you right now. We're going to do it. This is riveting for audio, so I just select my age. When do you want your payments to start? So let's say I'll do 6 months. Okay. I have a 6-month emergency fund, so I can make it 6 months that my payments start. How long do I want to receive my benefits? You can do 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, or until retirement. So there's multiple options. I'm going to do until retirement so you can see both. And then how much do you want to receive per month?
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'm going to do the max, which is 6,000.
Okay.
There's your prices. So it's for me, spits it out, be about $175 a month for the long-term disability. And that lasts for 48 months. And then to go until retirement age, it'd be an additional $150 a month. So for just over $325 a month, I'm basically covered.
Do you think you could negotiate that into your compensation agreement with your boss if you're a corporate pilot?
Yeah, it was the next point I was going to make.
$325 a month.
Yeah.
To get $6,000 a month until you retire.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
It's literally a no-brainer.
This is the time of year where a lot of our friends
That's like if you're a truck driver and you had only one truck
Yeah.
for the rest of your life. And if you lost it, enough said.
Yeah. Visit harveywatt.com, play with the insurance calculator, go bring it to your boss and say, hey,
Just slam it on the table.
done. You want to do it post-tax.
Post-tax.
Post-tax. That's a little extra hint. Anyways, on to our interview with James. Here we go.
And now, our friend, our esteemed colleague, aviation job extraordinaire, James Onieal.
Industry update.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing?
James is wearing his turtleneck tactical garment tonight. We appreciate that. Welcome
It's
to
a
Cold
Mox
Neck.
turtleneck.
winter.
Come on, that makes it cool. People can't see me. They think I look like I'm 90 now.
There's a nice fire behind him. It's
Yeah.
very relaxing out there.
Well, when you fly airplanes that don't have APUs, you got to dress for the weather.
Oh, yeah. Max and I know all about that. We just did a
Yeah.
7-hour cross country in his airplane in the wintertime.
Oh, nice.
11,500
At
feet in the
11,000 feet, yeah. It's a little crisp. But anyways, James, what's going on out there in the industry?
Is anybody hiring? What are you hearing?
No, it's been really slow. As of end of October, there's only been about 11,300 people offered CJOs in 2022.
Holy
So
cow.
it's been a fairly slow year. Not a lot
Mm.
going on. It's been absolutely crazy. We got about 11,300 pilots have been offered conditional job offers in 2022. Now, I know a lot of people, they hear that number and they're like, whoa, 11,300 pilots were hired. That's not actually true. Depending on which carrier you're talking about, when you run the polling numbers and you kind of take a look, roughly about 30% of the pilots that are being offered conditional job offers have two in hand. So if you think about those 11,300 job offers, that really makes up about 8,000 pilots that got those job offers. Certain carriers, that's a little bit higher. You'll see 40% of the people they've offered a conditional job offer have two, but on average, about 30%. So about 8,000 pilots have been offered jobs in the first 10 months of this year. That's not even the entire year.
Hold on, but let's qualify that. That's not counting regional airlines, right?
No, this is just the major airlines. United, Delta, American, Spirit, Southwest, Atlas, JetBlue, Alaska, UPS. These are your big boys. We're not even
Right.
talking about regionals. God, those numbers would be
Yep.
skewed like crazy. On average, when you look throughout the year, that's just shy of about 1,200 pilots are offered CJOs per month. So that's about just shy of 700 pilots being offered a job a month. 60% of those monthly offers come from United, Delta, American, and Southwest. Just those four carriers are making up about 60% of those total job offers. So it's absolutely insane. And it's very fast paced and it's creating a lot of anxiety for folks. It's creating anxiety because some people are going, why am I not getting called? Which is when we were at the RTAG convention, which shout out to RTAG, it was like 5,000 people registered. It was absolutely amazing. But Corey Glenn, the head of hiring at American, he flat out said, he goes, 95% of the people who are not getting a call from us right now is due to their application not being completed properly. 95% of the reason. And he flat said, he goes, we will pass you by. We are not going to stop and call you and say, fix this on your application. He goes, we have enough applications on file. So even despite all those people getting hired, I was talking to one legacy airline recruiter. Of the 12 interviews they did in a day, they sent 9 people home without job offers. People think that because these numbers are so huge, hey, you can just walk in the door. And it's just not the case. So they're still being selective in who they're choosing, meaning it's not a guaranteed thing that you're going to walk in the door and, hey, they're just going to offer you the job offer. The quantity of job offers is creating anxiety for a couple of different reasons. So the first is, people taking a look at their buddies getting hired and they're going, why am I not getting hired? Well, 95% of the reason is there's probably a problem on your application. Every time I get on, I tell you crazy stories about people that are getting hired with check ride failures in the background and terminations and DUIs. And we had one guy come up to us at RTAG. He goes, hey, I've been working with you guys over the past year. He goes, I just got hired by United, 1,800 hours at a regional airline. No military background, a straight civilian guy. So 1,800 hours, flight instructing, then went to a regional, got hired by United. And people go, well, how does that happen? Easy. The second he got hired by the regional and got off IOE, we did his application review and showed him exactly what he needed to do on a monthly basis. And when you're consistent over time, you could hit those targets very early. And so if you think about it, United this year has hired 2,100 pilots. They're going to do the same next year. That guy's 1,800 hours is going to have 2,100 people underneath him. That's like 15% seniority he's going to gain in 1 year. The rule of thumb is 20% up in seniority and you're good. So you take a look at how meaningful it is to get on sooner and what that seniority does. It's substantial. I mean, it's 2,000 numbers, 2,100 numbers. The second thing that's creating anxiety is folks trying to organize the quantity of interviews that they have. So it's funny, we've basically started up a de facto new service where we're writing emails for people to human resources on their behalf, having to rearrange interviews or line interviews up, around their flying schedule. Folks are getting called for interviews and they're only given a week or 2 weeks notice. So they're trying to figure out, hey, look, when should I schedule this? How do I delay it so I can prep? Which is why we're telling people to prep now. If you wait to prep for when you get an interview, you're going to have to delay the interview 2 to 3 weeks. And if you think about how many numbers in seniority you lose, that's about 200 a month. You lose 200 seniority numbers by not being ready to take that interview immediately. So the folks that are working with us that are learning the introducing yourself and why do you want to work here and talking to their buddies about why they like working there. So when they show up, they don't give a canned BS answer. The ones that are going through there, tell me about a time stories and what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses and what makes a good captain, what makes a good first officer. And then we're video recording them doing it and sending them the recording so they can watch them over and over and over. When they get the interview, they can walk in the door immediately. They don't have to wait. They don't have to give up that seniority. The folks that are calling when they get the interview scheduled, not only are they trying to cram this interview prep down their throat, but they don't realize how much logbook stuff they have to put together, company records, PREA records. You got to get all this stuff together. And so you need to be preparing now before they call you so that when they do, you can jump on the opportunity immediately. Otherwise, honestly, it's pretty stress inducing. And we end up having to do a lot of writing on their behalf to HR because, look, we have a lot of people interviewing at American, United, Delta, Southwest, FedEx, UPS. I mean, I just had a guy I talked to today. In the past week, he's gotten conditional job offers from American, Southwest, and FlexJet. I can go through all the list of clients that have multiple conditional job offers, but there was a lot of organizing that we did with them to reduce that stress during the process to get all that stuff organized. But then that leads into the next thing. When folks put in an application, they follow the old advice, which is, hey, just take an application and put it in everywhere, and whoever calls you first, take a job. Once again, they don't think through what happens if 3 people call me at once. And so you think if 1 conditional job offer is good, then 3 has to be great. What they aren't thinking through is how much stress and pressure that puts on them. Because look, the reality of the situation is a majority of pilots are the breadwinners in their house. Unless you're married to a surgeon or you're married to somebody that owns a business, you're probably making the most amount of money in the house. And so when you have an offer from FedEx and United, or United and Delta, or United, Delta and American, or American and Southwest, and you take the American Southwest one, let's say you live in Dallas, and now you're going, well, if you're hired today, within the next 7.5 years, more than 50% of the pilots at American will be junior to you. They're replacing 50% of their seniority list within the next 7.5 years. 50% of American's wide-body captains are retiring in the next 3 years. 75% of their wide-body captains retire in the next 5 years. And 100% of the American Airlines wide-body captains will be off property in 9 years. When you add the FOs to that, 75% of all wide-body pilots, that's captains and FOs, will be retired within the next 7 to 9 years. So I know people are freaked out about American's debt situation and what's going on there, but they're replacing 50% of their seniority list in the next 5 years. Even if that went completely sideways, do you think that they're going to get rid of 50% of their people? That's why they're quoting the quickest pathway to the left seat of a wide body. So now imagine you have that opportunity at American, and then you have this opportunity at Southwest. And so Southwest thing is safety and stability and security, and we've never furloughed. And then you've got American going, but look at all this growth, and we're going to put you into the left seat. You could be a wide body captain, and we're simplifying our fleet so you can fly an Airbus domestically, or you can fly a 787 internationally, or you can do whatever you want. It's a lot of stress to get that right, because when people make the choice, they want to make sure the next choice they're making is their last choice. They don't want to make a decision, go to a carrier, and 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years later get furloughed and have to turn to their family and go, I'm really sorry, I made a horrible choice. that when I could have gone to Southwest or American or Delta or United, I chose company X. And it turns out if I chose the other one, it would have been good. Think about that.
Someone wise once said that if you're afraid of fear of missing out, then buyer's remorse is 10 times worse.
Sure is.
So as I'm listening to you spout these numbers, it's almost like an analytical process at some point. You could say, like in your example, oh, I live in Dallas, Southwest and American, probably. I'm choosing between the two. And at some point, even though you might think your cultural fit at Southwest might be better, the numbers are going to tell you American. Are you starting to see people go, well, I think I might be happier here from a cultural fit, but the numbers dictate something else. And so the numbers are just too overwhelming. I have to make that choice.
So the fun thing about this is we weave these conversations in during the application review process. We weave these in during the interview prep process, and we weave these in during the coaching process. So when folks are working with us, honestly, we're dealing with this in small chunks throughout the entire process. And the reason why we're doing that is figuring out what you're going to do with the rest of your life is much easier to do sipping out of a glass than it is drinking from a fire hose. Every time we go do a takeoff, we do all these performance calculations, we do all these briefings, we talk about all these different contingencies of what we're going to do if something goes wrong. We don't get in the airplane, say a prayer, push the power levers full forward, and then when we drop an engine at V1 go, hey, what do you think we should do here? You think we should turn left or right or maybe climb straight ahead? We think through these things and we contingency plan. And it's the same way we do it when we work with folks is we start talking about the contingencies because honestly, you need time to sit with them and you need time to let them sink in so you can make the right choice, not only for you, but for your family. The second part of it is people typically get to a point of analysis paralysis where they're pulling in all this data of the hiring numbers and who's doing what my buddy is doing and what schedule I can hold and so on and so forth. And what folks don't realize is fundamentally the decision boils down to your own personal risk tolerance. Most people, when they make a career decision, are trying to make a decision with the concept of, I don't want to lose anything in mind, right? They're trying to prevent losing something. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to get furloughed. I don't want to get downgraded. I don't want to lose out on retirement money. I don't want to lose out on a pay increase. I don't want to lose out on a quicker upgrade to captain. I don't want to lose out on time because I'm commuting. They're trying to prevent losing. And that is a very stressful way to look at this. And so what we do instead is we flip it around and we find out, hey, look, what are your main drivers? And if we were going to oversimplify that, it boils down to things like type of flying, advancement opportunities, how quickly are you going to upgrade? Do you want to do something in the training department? Things like that. Outside the cockpit opportunities, do you want to either do things inside the company but outside the cockpit, or do you want to do things outside the company, outside the cockpit? Like for instance, me, right? I own a business. So outside the cockpit stuff's very important to me. What type of schedule do you want? What type of quality of life do you want? Do you want to commute? Do you not want to commute? What's the pay? So for each person, those things, it's not one over the other. They kind of fit together in a recipe and a combination.
Okay.
And so we have to go through and really pin that down. And I've got some really creative questions that I ask people to kind of get them down to that. But it's a lot of wrestling with that until we get to a point to where honestly, I can pinpoint, hey, look, I think this is really what's driving the decision. And let me explain why. And usually people go, oh, geez, I didn't think about that. That's right. And then they have really deep clarity. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. Normally when we do this with their spouse as well, so there's two people on the conversation. But we were talking about a legacy cargo carrier they were going to have to commute to versus a passenger legacy carrier that was right in their backyard. And it boiled down to a safety and security decision versus a quality of life decision. And when you're talking about a legacy cargo carrier and a legacy passenger carrier, they're both great jobs. It's not like we're talking about, do you want to go to, let's just say, I don't know, FedEx versus Piedmont. You know, when you're talking about FedEx and United or UPS and Delta, they're both great choices. And I'm not trying to crap on Piedmont. I'm just picked a random regional. So for all the Piedmont pilots, we love you.
Yeah, shout out.
Please show up to work so we can get to where we need to on Christmas. So these become very stressful, but when we can pin down, hey, what your actual motivator are, usually is very nuanced, but very meaningful when we can pinpoint that because it makes the yes very clear. Yes, I want to go here versus there, as opposed to, I just don't want to make the wrong decision.
So you're talking about these legacy cargo carriers, and we've seen some news coming from FedEx saying, oh, maybe we're slowing down hiring right now. And we're going, whoa, wait, what is this? I thought everything was going gangbusters. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that a sign of things to come with other carriers?
Yeah. So number one, thank you very much for reading the weekly Tuesday email that we send out. I appreciate that because I assume that's probably where you saw the news from.
Yes, it actually was. Yes.
So we did. We put out that memo from FedEx that talked about basically, for those that are not familiar, FedEx has a personal endorsement where somebody internal to the company, I'm going to somewhat oversimplify this so we don't bore people with details, but somebody internal to the company will send in a letter of recommendation on your behalf. But it's not like a traditional company where you just send in a letter of recommendation. I'm basically vouching for you personally, and you are attached to me. So if something goes sideways, I'm going to have to proverbially answer for it, right? And I can only offer so many of these personal endorsements. So they're very valuable. Like I can't hand 10 out a year. And so FedEx was talking about how they have 2,000 personal endorsements on file that they haven't actually gotten an opportunity to interview yet. And how those 2,000 personal endorsements are very successful for them, meaning they have a really great history of being able to hire good quality candidates out of there that they stick around. And I'll read right from the letter that they sent out. Even with the current hiring numbers, which are expected to lessen, we are looking at years for those at the end of the existing list of 2,000. For that reason, they've agreed to suspend the personal and professional endorsement process while they review the existing database and move to a first in, first out system. Oldest endorsements process first for existing endorsements. The process has been incredibly successful, but they need to shrink the existing list before they accept new endorsements. A suspension will allow them to assess how they move forward as the hiring landscape changes. That's pretty detrimental if you want to get hired by FedEx. Your biggest, greatest chance to get hired there, they're now saying, hey, look, we're going to put the brakes on that. And so that is some disappointing news for folks. And that creates some fears, especially when, look, let's be honest, whether you own crypto or not, you've probably seen what's happened with FTX recently. And even if you don't own crypto, when you're watching major companies like SoftBank, Sequoia write down multi-million or billion-dollar investments to zero, that's real money that was lost. When you're watching these layoffs that are happening in tech, you start to see what's happening in some of the housing and rental market. People, rightfully so, are nervous about what's going to happen in a recession in 2023. So just to give you an idea, we compiled some retirement numbers just between American, United, Delta, and Southwest. So just the four biggest passenger carriers, a little over 1,100 pilots are going to retire. That means the big four would have to hire 100 pilots a month if they just decided not to grow.
Yeah, that was my question, James, is like the amount of attrition, the retirements that you're trying to replace, doesn't that hamper growth opportunities too? Where it's like, how can you grow, especially when you're talking about retiring that many people from a wide body, the amount of training events from narrow body FO to a wide body and narrow body captain to a wide body and blah, 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 and all the way down the line. How is it even possible, one, to replace that many pilots, but two, to then expand it all? Like, can't, right? Or can you?
Well, the crazy thing is we're talking 2023 between the big four carriers, about 1,100 pilots total retiring. In 2024, that goes up to 2,100. In 2025, it's 1,400. In 2026, it goes back to 2,400. The retirements alone, 2024, 2,100 pilots they have to hire just to not shrink. Now, if you read the weekly email that we send out every Tuesday, which ravencareers.com, top right, you can sign up for industry alerts if you're not already on there, and that's how you get on the email. But we put in all these articles about what carriers are ordering what airplane, what carriers are saying they want to expand, what carriers are saying, hey, they're going to slow down their hiring. Other than FedEx, we haven't had anything where people are talking about massively slowing down their hiring. In fact, when we take a look at, these are just the publicly stated numbers, American is looking at 2,000 pilots per year that they're going to hire for the foreseeable future. That's straight out of their presentation from Artec. United, 2,400 pilots next year. They're saying 10,000 by 2030. Southwest, just shy of 2,200 pilots they're going to hire in 2023. UPS is probably going to be about 250, and NetJets is about 500. That means in 2023, there's probably going to be more pilots hired than there were in 2022. And people say, well, hey, what about the recession? Honestly, a recession is going to make it easier for them to continue to hire and train. The craziness that's going on right now with people getting hired and then sitting at home because there aren't enough instructors and there aren't enough simulators. A recession is going to help them catch up. And so, Max, when you ask the question, where are they going to find them from? How are they going to do that? That's why you're seeing all this craziness on a monthly basis of $150,000 sign-up bonuses at Air Wisconsin. And we've talked about this before, but I want you to imagine you have a car, and let's say you know that car is worth use $10,000. And I walk up and you say to yourself, if somebody offered me $10,000, I'd take that because it's a fair price. And so I walk up to you, Max, and I go, hey, I'd like to buy your car for $10,000. And Dylan overhears that and goes, you know what, Max, I really like your car. I'll give you $11,000 for it. So now you turn to Dylan and go, 11,000. And while Dylan's pulling his checkbook out, I go, you know what, Max, I'll give you 12,000. And before you even look at me, Dylan goes 13,000. Before you know it, you're actually going to take a step back and go, you two just keep fighting with each other. I'm going to sit here until you figure it out. That's what's happening to pilots right now. The numbers are so large and so stupid and so erratic and coming out of nowhere that they're even hard to advertise well, that people are in a basic state of shock over what's the right decision.
That's exactly what my wife is doing. She doesn't even understand these postcards I'm getting every day.
I get them too.
Yeah. So that was my next question is like the regional carrier situation. We're hearing a lot of chatter about people talking about, well, if you want to go work for American, don't go work for American feeder because then you're going to get blocked. And so you got to go work for United feeder. So there's like all this strategy, right? What's the term they use? Metering or something? Or
Metering, yeah.
So is that something that you look at when you're helping folks make the jump from flight instructor to regional, or is that kind of just not as big of a deal as people think?
Yeah. So let's talk about these programs. Clearly, the airlines are working very hard to get these programs up and running to create a flow of pilots coming in the door.
Yeah.
And you can see it when you take a look at why would an airline jump off of an application platform and start their own application? Unless they really needed to control the data, unless they really needed to get people into their pipeline and watch the data from day one and see how are they performing all the way through. Because you got to remember, I've been flying for a little over 20 years. I've got 8,000 or 9,000 hours because I'm lazy. I don't fly as much as everybody else. I've probably taken, I don't know, what do you take a check ride a year? So 20, 30 check rides. I've worked at 10 different companies, let's say. I'm an easy person to hire. You can take a look at my background and see how many check rides have I failed? How many times have I been disciplined at an employer? How many times have I been terminated, right? I have a whole history that you can look through. So when you bring me in the door to interview me, you're really checking, am I a good cultural fit? Now think about an airline that's committing to you and you're 22 years old and they've got no record. They can't ask you, tell me about a time you got into a disagreement with a captain because you've never flown with one. Watching carriers having to change the questions they're asking candidates to, instead of tell me about a time you had a conflict with a captain, it's tell me about a time you had a conflict with a flight student. They can't even ask the deeper level, tell me about a time questions because honestly, they don't have a story for it. That's why you'll watch at a Delta interview, right, who they have historically hired younger pilots. You'll see they have a lot more scenario-based questions. Because if you don't have a depth of experience to tell me about a time stories to pull from, I can ask you scenarios and say, how would you behave in this type of situation? So the carriers are working really hard to figure this out, moving to their own application programs, starting up their own flight schools, reorging their interview questions. And we watch it constantly. Look, every week I get hundreds of submissions of interview. We know exactly what the carriers are asking. And not only we know what are they asking, but I can tell you why they're asking the question. When they're asking this question, this is what they're looking for. This is what they're scoring. This is how this fits into their matrix because we're watching who they're hiring and not hiring. So we can tell you, hey, this is what they're trying to solve for. All that's to say, the major airlines are not in a place where these things are solidified yet and it's up and running. Take a look at American 5 years ago. If you wanted to get hired by American, you had to go through one of their regional airlines. 65% of their new hires every month were from one of their regional providers. 30% were from the military and 5% was everybody else. That's your corporate pilots, your regional pilot from a different regional, not in the American system, right? You had a 5% chance of getting hired by American effectively. There's American recruiters out there that probably say 7.3%, but you had a 5% chance of getting hired by American if you didn't go through one of their regionals. That's what they're all trying to get back to. Steady flow, but they're not there. So right now, you got to ask yourself, if XYZ flow-through program is really the fastest way to get to the airlines, then ask the recruiters, how many people you've hired every month? And I want to know how many each of those people came from each of your regional carriers. And when they don't tell you the number, you tell me why they don't have the number.
I heard another guy online saying, well, it'd be smarter for me to go to one of these fractional carriers like ExoJet and go fly there after flight instructing. And then I'm not going to be quote unquote throttled going in the door of the major airlines. Do you think there's validity to that, or do you still think the regionals are your best path?
So it depends on a couple different things. So the first is what people are neglecting. I think pilots are spending too much time looking at how much the regionals bonus programs are and not enough time looking at how good their training program is. You got to remember the regionals are your practice for the majors. So you have a regional with a very good training program, very good check airmen, very high success rate, very good pilots on the line that want to mentor. And I know that's tough to ask for right now because of the high turnover, but that's a place that's teaching you the process for how do you get ready for that major airline? How do you study? What do the flows work like? Remember, the op specs that a regional has are effectively the same op specs a legacy has. I know the regionals don't do the Europe and the Asia flying, so there's some differences there, but I call it exemption 3585 because that's what it used to be. It's not called exemption 3585 anymore. But
Remember
no,
that,
exemption
yeah.
3585, alternate minimum, it's all the same stuff. When you work for a regional airline, all the processes and conflict resolution and all that stuff, it works the same because the legacy carrier is the one dictating all that. So you can't lose sight of the fact of how much you learn by being in that system. Because remember, when you get to the legacy a year and a half in, you might be a captain. So if you're 22 years old and you go to XOJet and then you get hired by United a year later, are you going to be ready to be a captain at United a year after that? You got to ask yourself that. It's different for each person. If you got a lot of flying experience from a lot of different places, or you have a lot of leadership experience because you've done stuff before you went flying, then it's a different ballgame. Then you take a look at an ExoJet or a NetJets or a FlexJet, and you're looking at, that's a really great place to work. That's a place where if I didn't get hired by the legacy carrier I wanted to work at, this is a place I could stay. When we talk about that, you really got to look at what your experience level is. I worked at Colgan.
You love to mention that every episode. It's like you feel like you're getting street cred.
It's like a badge of honor. Do you have a tattoo or anything you want to reveal right now on the show?
The badge says trauma on it. So I've probably told the story before, but the very first time I shot an instrument approach below 1,000 feet was at Colgan Air. And it was into Martha's Vineyard. And the Saab was very touchy on the ground. So when you landed, about 60 knots, captain will call it 60 knots, and they would take the power levers and the tiller. This is an 1,800-foot RVR approach or whatever into Martha's Vineyard. We touch down, we land, 60 knots, captain goes, my controls, and he takes his right hand, he puts it on the power levers, and all of a sudden snaps him up and goes, whoa. And I went, what? He goes, nervous? I go, yeah, why? The power levers were soaked. Yeah, it's the first time I ever shot an approach to minimums. He's like, thanks for not telling me that. So first time in severe turbulence, first time in severe icing, first time with a passenger screaming at me, first time dealing with flight attendants. Remember, flight attendants are a whole different ballgame. You fly a certain type of corporate jet, you don't have flight attendants on board. I got exposed to all of that up front. After about a year and a half to 2 years of that, I'm not saying you're an expert, but you're starting to get comfortable with the rhythm and how it works and what's expected of you and how do you get prepared. Do not underestimate the value of that with how quick these upgrades are coming right now. There's a boatload of people that are getting at United and getting at Delta. I won't mention his name because he can write in and tell you who he is. Flying King Airs, short stint in the Gulfstream G200, hired by Delta. 11 months in, he's holding 7.6 captain.
Oh, yeah. That's one of our listeners. I've talked to him.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Exactly. So I got the text from him at like 1 a.m. when the bid came because you'll never believe this. I actually wrote back to him, are you messing with me? Because I'm gullible. I was going to put that in the Tuesday email and then get slaughtered.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, he never thought I would get it, but I just got it. Now he's, look, like anybody upgrading to captain, you're flipping through the book really quick, learning as much as you can. So you've got to put yourself in that mindset that, am I ready for that opportunity that I really want? Because pretty quick, the dog catches the school bus. Remember, that was never part of the plan.
Yeah.
You were never supposed to catch the school bus. So you got to think about that beyond just the pay. When you're picking your career choices, it's not just the money.
It's funny, James, you mentioned this dog catching the school bus stuff. Now we're getting this in the corporate side too, right? Because we're running into pilots that are getting the job offer at the airlines, putting in their notice with their boss, and they're saying, what's it going to take for you to stay? And Max and I have both had to advise people, and you actually ran into this, Max, where it's like, be careful what you ask for to stay because they might actually offer it to you. And then you're like, well, then what?
I have that conversation with people. First of all, you really got to think through, what do you want? Because like you said, you got to watch out with this in business too. One of the things is when someone runs a business and they decide they don't want to work with someone, they just quote an outrageous price. Sometimes people say, yeah, I'll pay that. And then you're screwed. You got to work with the person you don't want to work with.
That's what happened when I went to get career advice from you.
Yeah, exactly.
I know I can work with this guy.
Thanks, Ray. Normally we charge X per hour. I'm just going to 10X that.
Yeah.
So
10 grand for a resume, I thought was a little steep, but.
And I'm offering you the friends and family discount.
Right.
You don't want to be disrespectful. I'm going to make up a number, right? But let's say you're making $180,000 a year and they say, hey, make us an offer. And you go, fuck it, 300. And they go, deal. And you're like, oh, I didn't actually want to take that. You're now in a really uncomfortable spot with someone where they met you where you wanted and you kind of spit in their face. So you want to be graceful with that. Everything is moving so fast that if you don't move intentionally, you can end up doing a lot of damage to your own reputation and relationships that you spent a lot of time building on, when really what you needed was probably 15 or 30 minutes to sit down and talk the strategy through start to finish and make sure you are clear on what you want before you open your mouth. My thing is you always want to be kind and respectful towards people. My uncle used to tell me this all the time, ran a bank for the Bank of Germany. He goes, you better be nice to people on the elevator ride up because you're sure as shit going to see them on the elevator ride down. You really got to be careful because you don't know what happens. Be in a situation where that opportunity that you turned down turns out it was really the one you wanted. You want to leave that door open to be able to go back if you need to.
Yeah. And as we all know, this world of aviation is very, very small.
Yeah.
Never know who you're going to see when.
It's hard enough on its own. I really don't want people rooting for me to fail. The biggest one that I see right now that I see in people is waking up every day and being miserable because people didn't spend the time to think through what do they actually want. And so they get to where they think they want to be. And then they realize, shit, I'm really unhappy right now. And they don't know.
How do you know
why.
what you want when you're 24 for the rest of your career?
That is a good question. So let's think about that. And I'm going to use some oversimplified examples. But if you're 24 and you don't know what you want to do as a pilot, then flexibility becomes really important. And I'll give you an example. You take a look at a United or an American, you can shape 3 or 4 different pilot careers at each of those companies without ever having to quit the company. Bryan, one of the guys on our staff, is a really good example. Bryan flies a 7-3. Bryan's been at United since 2012 or 2014. I can't remember. Goes to United. He flies a 7-3 domestically. That's all he does. I think he does like Newark to Seattle, Newark to LA, like every week. And I'm paraphrasing this. So if Bryan calls you and tells you I'm somewhat wrong, I apologize. But why'd you go to United? Look, I like the culture. I like the company. I like the type of flying. Okay, cool. Why the 7-3? I like the 7-3. Okay, cool. Do you want to fly internationally? He goes, then why go to United? Because I want the opportunity to fly international. He's leaving himself the opportunity that if he decides 3 or 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, I really do want to see what it's like to fly a 777. He can do it. And if he wants to fly a 7-3 domestically around the United States for the rest of his career, he can do that too. And if he wants to swap to more regional style flying, he can go to the A320. He can create 3 or 4 or 5 different careers at one company. If you're someone like me, where you're clear that time off and quality of life and flexibility are really important, Southwest might be for you. The ability to very easily drop things and pick other things up and swap things around and do 4 days of flying in 3 days can be really valuable to you. And so the earlier you are on in your career and the less aware you are of what you want, the more carefully you want to choose a place that gives you that flexibility. You guys can probably talk to me more about this or not, but you think about like you have a new kid, you're constantly buying new clothes and changing them out because the kid's constantly growing. I don't buy new pants constantly. I'm pretty much the size I am. It kind of works the same way with your career. The earlier you are on, a lot more changing there's going to be. The later you are in your career, typically, the more you know yourself, the more you know your family situation. Remember, it's not just about what you want. It's about if you decide to get married, it's what your spouse wants too. And so if that person hasn't been selected yet, if you haven't made a decision on whether or not you want to have kids yet or not, then you want to leave that opportunity to shift that around, if that makes any sense.
Let's take a little bit of a break from the retirement numbers, Max, and talk about some other numbers.
I don't know why. Every time I talk to him, I get like anxiety. It's all like good news, but I'm like, oh, it's just so much. And I'm just like, and I don't get anxiety about anything. But after I get off with him, I'm like, oh, this is so much.
Well, if numbers give you anxiety, then you need to talk to our friend Timothy P. Pope. because he will remove all of the anxiety out of the numbers on one of the most important things in your life, your portfolio, your investments. You need to focus on job hunting or preparing for captain upgrade or finding the right year's study guide. Let Tim handle all of the investment. He helps professional pilots nationwide create and execute a smart financial strategy. Timothy P. Pope, your financial planning partner for all phases of your financial flight. Check the show notes for link.
Always important for professional pilots. Do what you do well.
That's
Leave
right.
the landscaping, the tile work, and the financial planning to the people that know what they're doing.
Yeah. Go book your free appointment with Tim.
Call Tim.
Here we go. Back to the show.
All right, James, I have a question for you. So how does the fact that all of the major airlines are currently in contract negotiations right now and like how that all pans out affect what you do and how everybody makes these decisions?
Not as much as you would think. When you get to the legacy level and you're taking a look at contract, when you're talking about differences in money, it's typically soft money. Like if you take the pay tables and sit them side by side, there's nothing massively off about them, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
So it boils down to soft money. But the reality of the situation is when you're making $400,000 a year, typically what starts to really make the difference is quality of life, schedule, type of flying, so on and so forth. So when a lot of people have these conversations, they talk about pay a lot less than you would think because the pay's good all around. These contracts are being renegotiated fairly routinely. So if you have a 20 or 30 or 40-year career at a legacy airline, trying to pick the airline based on the contract is borderline stupid because it's going to change. What you really end up looking at is historically with the company, what have been the things the pilots fight for? Because that you can tell, okay, over time, I can't guarantee you're going to keep that, but I don't know. Do you see Southwest pilots giving up on scheduling flexibility? Probably not. That's something that's core to who they are. So you can look at the dollars all you want. That's going to fluctuate. But that concept of flexibility, that's there to stay. The last thing the pilots are going to vote out is going to be that flexibility. And so it's when you look at those things that are a little more nuanced, that's really what drives the decisions. When you take a look at what's a company's perspective on reserve rules, because, a lot of people think about reserve as something that only junior people do, but that's not the case.
Not if it's good.
Precisely correct. If you have a really good reserve system and you're somebody that, I'll use an overly simplistic example, you decide, hey, look, I want to start a family and I want to be around to be a part of my kids' lives. Those reserve rules, if they're good, could make it so that your neighbors think you're unemployed.
Yeah. Hey, listen, the only thing that's better than flying an airplane and getting paid for it
is
to getting paid for not flying an airplane.
Yeah. And so we find that typically those are the things that drive the decisions. It's not the dollars and cents. It's sometimes it'll be retirement driven, right? If someone's later in their career where they don't have as much time to make up the difference, that's typically when, hey, what's the contract say right now for pay and what does it say for retirement? But when you're dealing with someone who's younger or even mid-career, it's typically those more static things like flexibility, reserve rules, stuff like that. How quickly can I get into the left seat of XYZ airplane? Will I be able to do international or not? Will I be spending the rest of my career on the back side of the clock or the front side of the clocks? It's those types of things. Because let's be honest, if you can't figure out how to live on $200,000 or $300,000 a year, I've got a service for you.
And that's the thing. That's what I think is interesting about some of the younger pilots that are coming into this is that like more money you make, the less it impacts your quality of life. Like once you get over a certain threshold, the difference between making 60,000 and 100,000 is big. 100,000 to 200,000 is pretty good. 200 to 300, not a huge difference. And 300 to 400, it seems like it's a law of diminishing return.
Yeah, the number used to be about $70,000 or $80,000 a year. I think it's probably closer to $120,000 or $130,000 a year now. But past that $120,000, $130,000 a year mark, it just does not impact your happiness.
Yeah,
it actually does not impact your happiness. There's things you can do when you're making $200,000 a year that you couldn't at 120. It allows you to save for things in the future so that if you're worried about stability and losing your job, but it does not actually increase your happiness. And you can take a walk through any terminal or any FBO and you find boatloads of pilots that are making really good money that are miserable. There is a point where if you're not making the money, it does impact your happiness because you can't do the things that you want to do.
Stress level, all that stuff.
Precisely correct. But past that threshold of about $120,000, $130,000 a year, now when you're talking about 200, 250, 300, it's what fancy things can I buy to show off?
Yeah. It's funny because what I've always said is the measure of that is like, if you either fill your car up at the gas station and you drive away and you're like, I wonder how much that was. Like you didn't even look because it's gas. You have to fill up your car. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
And if you're not even paying attention to that, or you go to the grocery store or whatever, and you're like, what did we even spend like just now? Because it's a necessity, right? But you don't have to think about it. That's when you know you're beyond that stressful zone of where it's, do I even buy groceries or gas?
I do not want to spend my adult life sitting next to someone who's making $200,000 a year and angry about their life, or $300,000 a year and angry about their life, or $400,000 a year and angry about their life. I would much rather pick a place where I'm a good cultural fit, where yes, we're going to go through ups and downs. Contracts are going to go up and down. Companies are going to grow and they're going to shrink and so on and so forth. But overall, that the people that are there want to be there and like the people that they're being around, because that's actually going to impact.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Big
spend my
difference.
days off complaining to people about what my days on were like. The second, I want to be forgetting about work as I'm going into reverse.
Max, you need that as a new bumper sticker. I put premium in this truck and I don't even know how much it costs.
Yeah.
That's not bad. It's just like, I just remember when I got to that point and I was like,
Yeah.
or when I used to like be like, dude, I don't know if this is going to overdraw my account right now.
Yeah. This is another question I have though, James. What do you think about these folks that are starting at the majors at 24 that have maybe never really seen adversity in this industry? Maybe have not had to be in command of an airplane. Like, are you worried about some of those folks? Or do you think that's just the new normal? It is what it is. Like, do they even have the perspective to kind of understand where they're at?
Yeah, look, I think it's a double-edged sword. I think it's hard to really, truly, deeply appreciate something when you haven't been through adversity,
Yeah.
right? And I say that from my own personal experience, right? Of having achieved things and gotten to do certain things and realizing after I got kicked in the teeth how much more I appreciated it, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. It's why, honestly, at work, I really actually don't complain very much. I'm really content with what I'm doing and who I work with. The hard thing is when I take a look at when I was 24, right? And I had gotten hired by NetJets and they were really quick upgrades. And I had gotten a $60,000 pay raise over the course of my first week of being there. And they were giving me crew meals and putting me in nice hotels. And I mean, it was a really amazing opportunity for me. And I then remember about a year and a half in being like, oh God, this is going to be the next 40 years of my career. Because I had achieved something that for me was something I really wanted to achieve. But for me, I got it too quick. So it became almost like boring because it wasn't a challenge.
That's what I wonder. Like,
Yeah, that's a thing for sure.
If
Like,
I got to Delta at 24 and then I'm like, okay, that's it. You made it a good point earlier about, hey, there's a lot of variety and you can do a lot of different things. But I don't know. I guess the analogy I have is like thinking about someone who hikes up a mountain and then reaches the mountaintop and is appreciating the view versus somebody that takes a helicopter to the top of the mountain and then gets out and looks and goes, wow, this is really pretty. Like, there's a different context to the two people looking at the view there. So the flip side of that, and I hear this from a lot of pilots that are my age and Max's age and your age, is they have to now fly with people that didn't do what they did, just like the people that in the generation before us thought we had it easy. And that's probably always going to be the case for pilots. But there's also that part of managing the job of seeing people that are coming in behind you that are going to have an easier path than you and having to make peace with that. I mean, even people like Max, you were on reserve for years and some guys are getting hired and getting Phoenix base and line within 2 months and people having to deal with that kind of stuff.
That's the progression of time, dude. The people that I fly with were flying Metroliners with no autopilot in the winter in the upper peninsula of Michigan, unloading their own cargo. Like, we didn't do that.
It's the generational. Every generation is going to look at that. But I think our generation has to prepare ourselves to deal with that reality.
The big test of this has always been, we're not the only ones that have been putting relatively inexperienced people in the big airplanes. Like the Europeans have been doing it for a long time. Like, we just haven't had that program here. So I think you can kind of look to that to see how that all works out.
I'm not talking from an operational safety. I'm talking about you as a captain going and flying with these people that are getting hired at a very different stage
of,
and just dealing with your own, like, it's not jealousy. I don't even know what the right term is. I just see people in our quote generation having to grapple with that. Are you seeing that, James? And it's just something you got to deal with, right?
Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you. If I was at Delta, United, or American, I was flying with a 24-year-old captain, I'd be grinning ear to ear, shaking their hand because that's just freaking cool to me that they're getting an opportunity to do that. If I was in their position, I would have done the exact same thing they were doing, taking it and run with it. And dude, if you're going to let me in the bank vault and let me take all the money out, guess what? I got a truck. I'm pulling it up. I think in that sense, look, are there going to be people that are going to be bitter about it? Absolutely.
Mhm.
Far more often, what I have seen is people are like, dude, congratulations, good for you. Because nobody wants to be flying Metroliners in the UP in the winter loading your own cargo. Like, let's be honest. So that's that. The side that I worry about with it is it's not about how someone externally views it. It's, do you get the same job satisfaction out of it?
Yeah.
Because it's part of what goes into appreciating what you have is having not had it or having
Right.
had it taken away. Right. And I'm not saying that I'm wishing that on somebody. What I'm saying is that they have to, in my opinion, work harder to figure out what makes that special to them. They can
Yes.
do it. They can get to the exact same place. I just think it's a different type of burden. The other thing that I think is tough, and I like to think about each of us like we're like a banana. You get that banana from the grocery store and it's really, really green and it's really hard and brittle. And there's a ripening process, right? Over time, where it eventually becomes yellow and then it over ripens and it becomes black and mushy or brown. And you buy a banana from the grocery store, you can take it, you can put it in a plastic bag, you can tie that bag and you can speed up the ripening process to a certain degree. But I can't turn a green banana into a yellow banana in an hour. It's still going to take time. And so the difficulty that they're having if you're a really junior captain is you're having to learn how to manage a first officer that could be more experienced than you flight time wise, could have different life experience than you do. You've got flight attendants, you've got passengers, you got all these different interpersonal complications that you have to deal with. And you have a very limited experience set to pull from to deal with that in. I know for me, the techniques and styles that I use to deal with people, I didn't find in a book, man. I just made a lot of really bad decisions on how I interacted with people and then had to learn from those. But I made those decisions in a support as a first officer, not really as a captain, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. Because of the nature of how the
Sure.
economy was going, I didn't have an opportunity to upgrade that quick. When you had 7-year regional FOs, you got an opportunity to fly with a lot of different people and watch them
Yeah.
do things a lot of different ways and go, I'm going to take that because that's good. And I'm never going to do that because that was bad. Now imagine yourself at 24, 25 years old, and now you're being put in the left seat of a 7-3. And you've got, I mean, how many flight attendants you guys have, Max?
3 or 4, depending on which one.
Okay. So you got 3 or 4 flight attendants, you got another first officer, and you got how many people on board? That's a lot of interpersonal problems you got to deal with. And that's tough. It really is. And so from that sense, I look at it as good for them that they're there. And then for the rest of us that haven't had that opportunity or have had a little more experience to make really, really bad decisions, how do you share that knowledge as quickly as possible?
So I can see it's a future podcast episode. I just turned 25. Should I take the narrow body captain upgrade? Question mark.
There's a lot of guys that honestly, when those captain upgrades are coming up, they're turning them down because they don't feel ready. And it's
can see
not
that.
the flying stuff. You know, we all thought in flight training that being a successful pilot was learning how to land an airplane smoothly and shoot an instrument approach and yada, yada, yada. What they didn't tell you, it's mastering how to deal with someone screaming at you. It's how do you stay off of YouTube? The flying stuff's the easy part. It's the interpersonal stuff that's hard.
I mean, these numbers that you've got are crazy and it's hard to wrap our minds around it, but it's an exciting time for folks. But there is gravity with these decisions. And I think that's what you've done a good job of communicating to us. So I think the takeaway for me here is, man, if you're applying, make sure your application's good and make sure you're ready because there is no slowdown basically, right?
The takeaway is this, is there is nothing indicating right now that this is slowing down.
Yeah.
It's actually accelerating. So that's number one. Number two, if you want to learn this the way that I did, knock yourself out. Take 5 years of making really, really bad decisions, make a lot of mistakes, cost yourself X amount of years of seniority and money. And then you can charge someone else to teach them how to not make your own mistakes. Or you can just find someone that's made a lot of colossally bad decisions that's willing to share that information to you at literally 1/1000th of the cost that it is to learn it on your own. And so at the end of the day, it's continuing at the speed that it's moving at. The train's leaving the station. The question is, do you want to get on it? That's it.
And which car do you want to get on that
Yeah.
most suits you? All
So-
right, enough of these analogies.
Yes. So good. All right. Well, visit jamesbadmistakes.com if you'd like to talk with him. So, James, we'll have your contact info in the show notes. And of course, everyone knows they can visit ravencareers.com to schedule.
Make an appointment with the man himself.
That's right. Schedule an appointment with the master.
I tell everyone I'm the goofy guy on the show. Look, we're still going to be moving pretty quick. The hiring's still going fast. It's probably there's going to be about 1 week between Christmas and New Year's where it's a little bit slower. And then January 1, it picks back up again. So for everybody getting interviews, good luck. For everybody going on vacation for the holidays, Christmas, whatever you celebrate, happy holidays. And if I don't talk to you before the new year, I'll talk to you shortly after.
All right, James. Thank you.
Good luck to all the
Appreciate your
24-year-old captains flying on Christmas.
Fight the good.
Yeah, you'll be taking me to my next destination.
All
All right. Thanks, James.
right, man. See ya.
Okay. Well, Max, do you need to squeeze a stress ball after this interview with
No,
James?
just
Or you?
Quick cocktail. Take care of everything. I think I'm going to have to drink a cocktail next time we talk.
Next time you talk to him, while he's wearing a turtleneck and you've got a very nice old fashioned in front of you.
Dude, what world are we in? I say that all the time, but seriously, it's just,
The numbers are staggering right now.
it's crazy because we always preach these things go up so fast, they
Yeah.
go down just as fast. Certainly won't continue forever, but like he says, just because of the attrition, it can't fall that
Yeah.
hard unless, who knows, but
Unless ChatGPT AI can take over the airlines. And yeah. Now that you're coming down off your stress, Max, we've got another interesting guest to join us and tell us a story, because we've kind of gotten away from telling stories at the end of the episode for a while. So
it's true.
we got to get back to our roots. So Brian's going to join us and tell us some adventures from his time in the Canadian Air Force.
Flying the Harvard, eh?
Oh, yeah. All right, Max, we're excited to welcome Brian to the show.
From the Great White North of
That's right.
Canada.
Hi, Brian.
Yeah, hey guys. Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Brian, we're excited because you have launched a new podcast for pilots, which we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Yep.
And you've also got some stories for us. And you know us, we love stories above all else. And so, what you got up in the Great White North?
All right, yeah. I think today I was going to tell you guys a story about my first time attempting to go solo in the Canadian Air Force. So I was in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan at the time. It was 2011. And we fly the T6 Texan 2 there. We call it the Harvard 2.
Okay.
Wait. Why do you call it the Harvard 2?
Well, the Texan is called the Harvard, I think, in the Commonwealth. And we just have our own names for everything. Like I flew the P3 Orion, but we call it the CP140 Aurora. We just do that sometimes. It makes it more mapley and delicious.
Mapley. That's
All right. Anyway, continue. Sorry. So you're flying the Harvard up in Moose Jaw.
That's right. So it's my solo check ride to see if I can go solo. So we take off, do all the area work, do all the things you need to do. And back then, they still gave you simulated emergencies in the aircraft, which now they do in the simulator. So anyways, my instructor says, okay, simulated, I smell smoke. And I say, okay. And I'm heads down and I put my head down and I start doing the red pages from memory. And I'm asking him like, okay, simulated, I turn this switch and oh no, that's not it. So all of a sudden I hear him go, oh shit. And I look up and a plane just goes yang past us in a spin. And like I just was like, and like you got the oxygen mask on, right? You're just sort of trying to settle yourself down from almost dying. And he's got his hands on the ejection seat handle, he said. Which would have totally messed me up because I was like hunched right over with my back rounded. So like I for sure would have had like a destroyed back from ejecting like that. It was crazy. So, we pick ourselves up off the floor of the aircraft, emotionally and decide, okay, well, we got to go home now because there's been a flight safety incident. So we're going to knock off the training, go home and figure this out. So on the way back, I say, hey, sir, can I do the rejoin? Like, can I, just for my own training, can I practice this? He says, oh yeah, you know what? Show me your best rejoin and your best landing you've ever done. And the next flight, we'll hopefully just do a circuit check. We'll skip all the area work and then you can go solo. So I say, okay, great. So again, gather myself together. I'm going to do my best here. We're in downwind and we hear all aircraft on final, pull up, go around, gear unsafe. And we're just like, what is this now? It turns out that our aerobatic team, the Snowbirds, which is our version of the Blue Angels,
Yeah,
one
shout
of them
out.
lands wheels up and does a wheel landing on the runway. I actually have the newspaper article. I kept it in my logbook.
Oh,
I
really?
haven't looked at this in a while. Obviously, this isn't great for audio, so this is just for you guys, but you can see the article.
Oh,
And on the back, I've got written first solo check. So that was March 1st, 2011. And yeah, that was crazy.
What happened to the guy that was spinning that went right in front of you? Were they practicing spins and they just didn't see you?
Yeah, we were out in the training area. So before you do any of that kind of air work, you do a couple wing overs. So you just kind of do such a sharp turn that you can basically look up and be looking down at the ground so that you clear below you as well as like all the points around you and you make a radio call. So we never exactly figured out between us, like they swear up and down they did their call and there's no reason they wouldn't. It's training, like it's very procedural. And we were listening, but we didn't hear them. So it was just one of those days where the Swiss cheese lined up and almost lined up anyway. And luckily nobody got hurt.
Huh. Wait, does Moose Jaw have more than one runway?
Yeah, it's a parallel runway.
All right. So you just landed on the other runway.
Yeah, and the jets all land on the inner there, and we were in like I said, in the Texan too. So the props are all landing on the outer there. And
You mean the Harvard?
yes, the Harvard too.
Hey, wait, is it really the Harvard too?
Yeah, the Harvard. We just call it the Harvard.
So was the original T6, did the Canadian Air Force use it and call it the Harvard?
Yeah, I think that the whole Commonwealth probably did. I think the British probably did too, and that's probably where that comes from.
Poor Bryan thought he was just coming on the show to just tell a funny story. It'll take 2 minutes. Meanwhile, you're getting interrogated.
I'm happy to be your Canadian translator anytime you guys need it.
Yeah.
This is an incredible new resource.
There.
Yeah, wow.
What goes on?
Okay, so the Snowbird lands, gear up.
Yeah.
You're orbiting for a while, I assume.
Yeah, the rest of it is fairly simple. We come in for landing and taxi by, and my instructor basically tells me, keep your eyes forward and focus on what you're doing. Because obviously, as a student,
Oh, yeah.
it's going to be pretty easy to stare at this plane and take your own plane off the runway or something. So after a couple more tries, I did eventually go solo, obviously. The next one actually got canceled because of winds. And the other one after that was the one I went solo off, which my instructor said was an abortion, but he knew I could do better. So he sent me solo.
Endorsement.
Confidence.
Yeah, wow.
Yes.
I know you can do it. We've been through a lot together, Bryan.
I don't think you're going to die.
Yeah.
So I actually heard how the Snowbird pilot described it. So basically, as far as I understand, they had incorrect indications in the cockpit as far as the wheels go, which is how that happened to such a high level guy. But why they didn't hear the call is that only the lead monitors the UHF guard frequency. It's an older aircraft, so they're limited in their radios and they tune in on the formation frequency, basically. So he didn't hear it because they went out on guard instead of on the tower freak. He said basically it felt like if you got up to use the bathroom and you went to sit on the toilet and the lid was up, the seat was up and you didn't know, and you just all 1 second everything feels normal, and the next second you're like, oh, like a couple inches lower than you expect to be. And
Oh, that's a great analogy.
the good thing is the diesel tanks, they use diesel to make the white smoke, right, behind aerobatic aircraft.
Oh,
So those tanks are pretty robust. So if you actually land perfectly, which he did, they just kind of take the weight and act like a impromptu skid plate. So the aircraft itself was all right.
wow.
They just jacked it up, put the gear down, sent it back up, huh? Hey?
Ground test serviceable.
And then what do you guys call the airplane that the Snowbirds fly? Do you have a fun name for that too?
Tutor,
The Tudor.
like a teacher.
So everything's like education based up there.
What do you call the C-130?
The Scholar.
Those ones have the same, like the C-130 is still a Hercules, the C-17 is still a Globemaster, the F-18
This makes
is
no
a Hornet.
sense.
Yeah, no, it does not.
You just pick and choose? You guys just how it
I don't know.
goes?
There may be some convention behind it. I have never been privy to that mystic art of naming the aircraft.
We're
in
going to
the Air
need you to
Force.
get to the
All
bottom of
right.
this.
We'll have
Yeah.
a full,
Well, you'll have to bring me back.
riveting content. Everyone will be tuning in to hear. Well, Bryan, besides dodging spinning aircraft and soloing Harvard 2s,
Rubbernecking at the Snowbirds.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
their darkest hour.
You found some time to launch a podcast, especially kind of focused on folks that are going into the Canadian Air Force. Tell us a little bit about your new project.
Yeah, sure. So my podcast is called the Pilot Project Podcast. And it is important to include the word podcast because otherwise you'll tune into the Pilot Project, which is about pilot TV shows, pilot episodes. So that was my first mistake of many. So the goals of the show are kind of threefold. First of all, it is to inspire young pilots, young potential pilots to take up aviation, to basically show them how great it is and hopefully to spark an interest in the Air Force as well. The second goal is to connect with those people who are already in the training system. My hope is that they will hear some stories of folks who have gone out and kind of been there and done that and flown on different aircraft. And they'll both learn about what life is like on those aircraft, which will help them choose what they want to fly, as well as picking up some tips for how to make it and how to thrive in the Air Force. And then the final goal is just to reach, well, Canadians and anyone who's interested, basically, who just want to have a peek at what it's like to be an Air Force pilot.
Are there a lot of aircraft that the Canadian Air Force operate? Would it be pretty similar to the U.S. as far as the variety, or is there a lot less? Or
No, we're a much smaller outfit. We definitely kind of have a motto of doing more with less.
Dylan's motto in
Yeah.
college.
Yeah, right.
That's how he landed my sister.
it's a lot less.
Sorry.
Anyways,
That's all good. We have a cargo fleet. We have search and rescue. Search and rescue is part of the military here. It's not a Coast Guard. Well, we have Coast Guard too, but generally search and rescue is a purview of the Air Force. We have a fighter fleet, which is in the process of being upgraded to F-35.
But they call it the Thunder, not the Lightning.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. We call it the F-35 Sky Flash just kidding.
Oh my God, I was about to explode.
This is just great content. We should use this as a video clip, but this will be great.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
the sky
35
flash.
blizzard is
The blizzard.
Yeah, that's right. The maple moose.
The maple. Oh, man.
So, I mean, we have a decent amount of variety. Some of our fleets are starting to age a bit, but there's kind of replacements in the works. Very few militaries have the same scope as the American military.
Right.
I mean, for example, we have the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, but it's not like in America where your Army has a Navy and an Air Force. Our Army is the Army, our Navy has the ships, our Air Force has the planes, and there's no mingling in terms of like their functions.
Well, I guess that's what happens with that statistic of we spend more than the next 5 countries combined on defense.
Then everyone,
Well, you have 5 or 6 service branches, and they're all full.
Yeah, they all have their own thing.
And the Space Force now, we
Yeah.
just keep expanding.
Yeah.
It's a whole
Yeah,
thing.
we just started a space division as well. Actually, it's headed up by one of my old COs. He's a great guy. He's a fantastic leader.
I kind of want to talk to somebody. Like, I just don't know anything about the Space Force. Do you?
No.
Yeah, we'll have to save that for another episode.
I watched that documentary on Netflix with Steve Carell.
Oh, that's
That's right. There was a TV show on it.
Yeah, TV.
I watched the
it's pretty
pilot, which you can find at thepilotproject.com.
Yeah, if you've been in the military, I find the writing in that show, obviously someone was in the military. Like there's too much that's accurate in the humor of it, in the satire of military life.
When we were talking before the show, you mentioned you were a big James Onieal fan, huh?
Yeah, I listened to your guys' episode from almost 2 years ago, Furloughed and Confused. And I really like that. I was saying to you guys that I love his point about not letting being a pilot be your entire identity. And there's some irony, I guess, saying that as a host of a pilot podcast show on another pilot podcast show. But it's true. I mentioned to you guys that about 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with PTSD, really close to the time that episode came out, actually. I had to figure out what else am I besides a pilot. And the answers I came up with at the time were, well, I'm a dad and I'm a husband, and there's a lot of things in life I like to do. I like to stay active. I like to play video games. At that time, I was just beginning to have this concept of starting a podcast. So I really connected with that episode. I thought it was great.
Yeah, that's what we always say is the situation you find yourself in, potentially unexpectedly having to cut your flying career short, or a lot of people get to age 65 as airline pilots, and all of a sudden, it's funny too, because I fly with some of these people, and you could tell the ones that are going to do okay in retirement and the ones that are going to be like, this is going to be...
They don't have anything else going on.
Yeah, this is going to be tough.
Yeah.
Like, so what are you going to do? Aren't you excited? Or he's like, yeah, well, I got a lot of yard work to catch up on, and I think we're going to travel a little bit. I don't know. And I'm like, I'm just hanging there.
Well,
like,
it's just one aspect of this pilot mental health topic that continues to emerge. And we've discussed it before, I think, and you're kind of tackling it a little bit yourself on your show as well, Bryan.
Yeah, I try to be open about my own situation as well as kind of advocate for people to connect with mental health. My first full episode has a pretty good plug for the Canadian Forces Member Assistance Program, which is our free way of connecting with counseling off the books. And I was telling you guys before, it has really started to bear some fruit. I've had people reach out to me with questions and say, hey, some of the things that you're saying, they really resonate with me. I'm seeing myself in that. Some were friends, some were strangers. And for me, that's really meaningful. It's huge to be able to have an impact and to help support people like I was supported when I first started coming to grips with what I was dealing with.
Yeah, we've done a couple shows too, and it's amazing who comes out of the woodwork and the feedback you get, because there's a lot of pilots that are caught between the rock and the hard place of having a mental health issue and being so afraid to seek help or deal with it because of the potential and real ramifications of it. That's a really, really tough and terrible spot to be in, really. Know you need help and be afraid and prevent yourself from seeking it because of how this whole thing works.
What I would say to anyone out there who is hearing this and maybe having a mini panic spike right now because they're thinking, oh, wow, that's me, is you need to think about your priorities. And for me, nothing comes before my family. And when I started seeing that stress and the PTSD was making me quicker to anger or more short-tempered or was causing issues in my marriage or my relationship with my young kids, it was a pretty easy decision that there's really nothing worth more than those things. Like we've been saying, you're going to be a pilot for 30 or 40 years if you start young. The airlines or the Air Force or whomever are not going to be there tucking you into your bed and sitting by your side when you're old and frail. Hopefully it's going to be your family. They deserve your best shake. So you take care of your health, and then hopefully you'll be able to keep flying, but definitely you'll have a full life still.
That's well said, Bryan.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to share with us. We're excited to see where things go, and we look forward to talking to you again. And yeah.
How do people find the show?
So we're at podpilotproject.transistor.fm. On social media, we're at podpilotproject. If you'd like to send an email, we are thepilotprojectpodcast@gmail.com. And again, it's very important, guys. If you're searching for it, it's the Pilot Project Podcast. If you just put in the Pilot Project, you will be listening to TV shows. So I'm sure it's a great show, though. The last thing I wanted to add is at the end of that, you guys said that old cliche, flexibility is the key to air power. But the part that you missed out is indecision is the key to flexibility.
Oh,
Ah.
I need to tell that to my wife. I think she'll really, that's going to bring a whole new perspective. Yeah, that's our show motto. We say that every
That's
episode.
almost like procrastination is the key to flexibility.
That's
Yeah,
funny
we've got-
because I'm just starting to check you guys out, eh? And you know how it is when you're busy with your own show, and I'm a one-person operation for everything. So I'm just finally having time to check out some other new shows, and that's funny.
Yeah, that's us. All right. Well, good luck with your show, Bryan. And we're
Yeah.
excited to hear from you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
All right. Episode 89 in the bag.
That does it for episode 89 of the 21.5 show, a podcast by professional pilots for professional pilots.
The show for the pros, as you like to say. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Advanced Aircrew Academy, Harvey Watt, and Timothy P. Pope for supporting the show. Thanks to James, as always, for joining, and Bryan.
Thanks to everybody that wrote in to the mailbag for the kind words. And of course, thank you to the rest of our listeners.
If you have not, please go follow us on Twitter at 21.5 Podcast, because we're going to do that live Twitter show.
Oh, yeah.
And I want everyone to be a part of that. We're going to have Flight Advice live. It's going to be awesome.
Is there going to be a video component to that too?
No, you can't do Twitter Spaces, doesn't let you do
Oh,
video.
it's just been Twitter
But
Spaces.
it'll be a Twitter Spaces. It's going to be awesome. We're going to get some of the Diamond Dogs up there, and we'll answer your questions. It's going to be great. Maybe Elon will jump in.
You never know.
We'll see.
Very active these days.
If you want to get a hold of us, it's info@215podcast.com. We're looking forward to wrapping out the year strong in Roger Reeves in the new year. Should be great.
Starting strong.
Here we go. Here we go. All right. Well, while you're all flying out in the holiday traffic, maybe you're in Teterboro, maybe you're getting backed up at Newark, who knows? Just remember one thing. Flexibility
Is the key to air power. And procrastination is the key to flexibility.
Indecision is the key to flexibility.
I like procrastination.
Okay. They're both pretty good.
The thing about it, somebody invites you to something and you
Yeah.
kind of like procrastinate because you want to make sure you have flexibility to do something different.
Oh, that's
You get
a
a better
point.
offer.
That's a good point.
I think that's how it always is. I think
Okay.
that's human nature.
Shout out to Bryan for that one. All right. See you guys and gals. The statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.